without further ado, I'd like to welcome everybody who is online, all the delegates across Africa and some of you across the world to the BYM 2021 Summit. The theme is African Lions on the Rise. How will Africa change when a younger generation leads? And what we've seen from the delegate applications this year is a wide spread of applicants across the continent, which is great. It's been the most diverse cohort of delegates that we've seen across BYM's 21-year history. And we're very excited to welcome everybody that's online and attending, wherever you're attending from. We hope that you enjoy the summit, you learn from it, you engage, and you also make long-lasting connections. I think that this is a great opportunity for everyone who's a delegate this year to take advantage of the contacts, connections that you're going to gain throughout these 2 days, and also to learn from the wealth of knowledge and wisdom that we have in the form of speakers and panelists over the next 2 days. So just so you can see, this is what previous summits have looked like when we've been able to hold them in person. We hope to hold a summit in person next year. And we hope that some of you will join as alumni of BYM, which we have now over 1,500 alumni that have been delegates over the past 20 years. And we hope to have this type of fun as well. This is just an indication of the sort of spirit and culture of BYM summits. It's as much about learning from one another, but also about enjoying each other's experiences, each other's history, and each other's cultures. And so without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Paul Keursten, who has a management consulting background and spent some time in South Africa, and a couple of years ago was in Johannesburg and met a guy called Mark Seftel and Jonathan Liebman, and was very passionate about creating innovative spaces for entrepreneurs to learn, grow, ideate, and exchange ideas, which is what BYM stands for and really tries to promote. So we are very grateful for the partnership we formed with WS17. We hope to see this partnership extend into the long future. And really, Workshop 17 is really sort of looking at creating spaces for innovation, which I think the time is ripe for Africa now. And it's a great privilege to welcome Paul to the digital stage. And Paul will be sharing some slides and taking you through his journey of his background of coming to South Africa, learning about workspaces, and creating innovative spaces for growth and entrepreneurship in Africa. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Zunaid. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to try to share my screen while I speak. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning and to welcome you. I would have really loved to welcome you in our physical space, obviously, not only in the virtual space, but obviously with COVID, that's not really very well easy to organize. The advantage, though, is that with platforms like these, you can reach people that otherwise wouldn't be able to come, and wouldn't be able to come physically to a space like ours. That said, I will invite any one of you to come to one of our spaces whenever you're in one of the locations that we are. Just tell that you're Brightest Young Minds, and we'll put you up for a day on our cost so that you can see what we are about. What I would love to share with you this morning is a little bit of what we do and why we do, and mainly that last part. Why we do what we do. And as Zunaid said, I met Mark Seftel in 2010, and that's where the journey of Workshop 17 started. And as said, this is one of our locations. What we do is we create hopefully beautiful workspaces for entrepreneurs, professionals, and profits, non-profits, for a very, very diverse community. And a workspace, one of the triggers to create what we're doing is we felt a workspace doesn't need to look like a workspace. If you look at many of the offices, many corporate offices, they're not really inspiring, and they're not really fostering learning, innovation, and entrepreneurial behavior. And those three terms, learning, innovation, entrepreneurship, are really what I am passionate about, because I believe those three are keys to development, to inclusion, and to solving the problems that we have in our continent, but in the world as a whole. And we thought, what does a workspace look like that fosters that, that really creates opportunities for people? And that is a journey we took in 2012, where we started our first one in Maboneng. And now we keep doing it where we are now. At the moment, we have 6 locations. And if you're in there, and I still remember the first one in Maboneng, we had one of the CEO of one of the big companies come into our space, and he looked at it and said, I don't know what this is, but I want it. Which there's 2 things. One is, it didn't look like a traditional workspace. It looks like a space that you want to be in, that you want to come into, that you want to join, and they want to meet people in. And that is really what we are about. We have 6 locations at the moment, in the Western Cape 3 and in Gauteng 3. We are on a trajectory to double that within a year's time and to grow from there to about 20, mainly in South Africa, but we're also opening next year in Mauritius. And we're looking at partnering across the continent, because we believe that Africa as a continent has a huge opportunity, but it needs spaces like a WS17, where all the initiatives come together, feed off each other, and really can grow and take up new opportunities. So the bottom part of the slide, as you can see, it's not so much about the space physically only, the walls, the desks, the chairs. It is really about who you meet there and what is happening there. So we believe, and the philosophy that we do in our workspaces is, our spaces are a platform. They are a playing field for others. So it's not about us, it's about our members. We at the moment have over 1,500, so that aligns well with the Brightest Young Minds. And it's growing very fast. We have over 400 different companies in our locations, and we work with quite a number of partners to really add value and give something of meaning to all our members, but also to invite others in the space. But I want to tell you a little bit why we started this, and that is, this hopefully resonates with many of you and why you joined Brightest Young Minds and what you are about and what you want to do in this world of work and innovation. And the basic belief that we have is that if we come together and collaborate, our capacity to meet the challenges of our time increases exponentially. Innovation and solving issues is not a one-man show, even not a one-man company show or one-man organization show. It needs people from different backgrounds to come together and really collaborate and work together. And I think that's what Brightest Young Minds is about. And that's why I'm very excited about the partnership that we hope to grow. But we chose a different role than Brightest Young Minds. We found that what it actually needs is also creating physical and virtual spaces where these initiatives and people come together. So how do you create a space where people meet, can collaborate and innovate? And that we thought is our role. We, at the time that we started, we saw that there's many incubators, accelerators starting, but they're all on their own islands. And we thought, if you look at it in Africa and South Africa, where we operate, there is so much happening, but sometimes you don't see it because it's scattered. It's not coming together. It doesn't create a movement. And we thought, let's create physical places where different incubators can come together, companies can come together, but not only entrepreneurs, also corporates, also NGOs, also policymakers. So it becomes this melting pot and meeting ground for people who otherwise would not meet. So that is basically what we set out to do. And we are creating the space, the technology, and the community to make that happen. And in our journey now, quite proud of what we've achieved. If you walk through one of our spaces, I'm always very excited when someone tells me, since I joined, I got 3 new opportunities, or I met this exciting person. And that is just what makes me really do what I do and keeps going in what I'm doing. And I want to take you to a metaphor, how you could see what WS17 and also other collaborative spaces are about. What we want to be is a coral reef for entrepreneurship and innovation. And it stems from this book, if you can see it. One of the inspirations for Mark and me is the book of Stephen Johnson, Where Good Ideas Come From. If you haven't read it, I can highly recommend it. If you're not a reader, go on to TED. He has, I think, 2 or 3 talks on TED on the subjects. It's really worthwhile. And it breaks the myth of innovation and happening in a lab with a very smart thinker that's on his own. It's more in an environment that is like a coral reef in the ocean. And the book of Stephen Johnson actually starts with the story of Darwin, who is sailing in the Caribbean and is close to a coral reef. And it fascinates him so much. It fascinates him that in this vast open sea, you could see life. But when you come to a coral reef, you can see this explosion of life, this explosion of diversity. The density, there's so many creatures, there's so many colors, there's so many things happening in a very small scale. So even though there are 0.1% of the sea life, 25% of the sea life is happening in and around coral reefs. The other thing that struck him is when the sea becomes violent and the waves come, the coral reef actually renews itself. It's resilient, not always to our pollution as human beings, but that aside, but to the nature's forces. It renews itself and it grows, and that's part of the coral that's in the reef. And we set out to be what the coral reef is in the ocean. We want to be for entrepreneurship and innovation. And that is the metaphor that inspires us every day and that we want to work with. So I took reference to this book of Stephen Johnson. And I don't know if you look at where you are as an entrepreneur or professional in whichever role you are, and you look back on what is important to get you where you are or to be able to do what you can do now, you will often find that there is quite a few accidental meetings that have happened to get you there. You met someone who you didn't know and turns out to be a very important person in your life. Or you've heard something in passing or one ordering coffee didn't make sense in the beginning, but somehow it stuck to you and you strike up a conversation with that person. And it's actually a missing link of something that you try to figure out. Those things you can't plan in advance. They are accidents, positive accidents in the most positive sense. And in that sense, you could see what we try to create is the place where those accidents happen as much as possible. Those positive accidents of a door that opens, an idea that comes to you, a person you meet that gives you a new insight or that becomes someone you work with. You cannot plan it. And in that sense, I hope that we create spaces and that you have spaces for yourselves, that every day something happens that you didn't expect to happen, but later on in hindsight becomes something that's important for your next step. And the short answer on this question about where good ideas come from is actually it happens in cafes. Everyone knows we are in a conference, but some of the most important moments in a conference happen during the break times. A little bit difficult now on virtual, but when you are in a coffee shop or when you meet someone or you sit next to someone, that turns out to be an important meeting. When you look at history, cafes have provided always a big role in innovation, in revolutions, in creating new ideas. But an idea as such is not valuable. It needs to have a possibility. And it's on the right. It needs to have an adjacent possibility or an adjacent possible. And that is what a workplace can be, where you have the tools, you have the clients, you have the possibility to apply what your idea is. And an idea doesn't come, it grows, it mutates, it evolves over time. So that those are the slow hunches that happens. I'm not going to lecture you about the book more, but I just hope to inspire you to just pick it up and read if you don't know it already, or maybe it already rings something in your own experience and you think about, geez, That is what it is. And for me, my background is learning and development. I see Workshop 17 spaces or collaborative workspaces as learning environments. I would hope everyone that comes to a space like ours, in the end of the day, think about, I've learned something new. And it was because I was in this community. So how do we then translate this vision into everyday reality? And firstly, then we create cafes. All of our locations have a cafe. And not because coffee is great, yes, good coffee, everyone thinks good coffee is important in the workspace, but because of what I just mentioned, that opportunity that you meet someone and as a startup, you end up next to the CEO of Liberty or Diversity or whatever big company, and you don't know it, and you strike up a conversation that you normally wouldn't have. Those things happen in cafe, and what you see in the image here on the slide is our cafe in Santon. And I wanted to show you that because Santon, if any one of you knows Santon, it's like a corporate CBD. Huge buildings, huge corporates, people drive in with the car, into the parking, go to their work, drive out at the end of the day and go home. Nothing much happening on the street. Every building has a fence around it and you need to go through security. The first thing we did is actually take down the fence and open, and you can see it here in the back, open a walk-in gate. Everyone can walk in. So our cafes are not only closed, but open to any public, anyone. If you're not a member of Workshop 17, you can come in, have a coffee and meet people. That's one of the important things, an open boundary, like a coral reef. A coral reef doesn't have walls around it. It's open to the environment around it. That's why we do what we do. We invite diversity. Lots of co-working spaces in the past had entrepreneurs and startups. We deliberately create event spaces and invite corporates in, because I do think in the mix between corporates and startups, that's where magic can happen, because they have reach, startup has new ideas, and they need each other. And we would love for our entrepreneurs to not have to go through 30 steps to get to the CEO office, but just meet a CEO at a Workshop 17. We welcome everyone and don't judge. And I think that last part is very important. A coral reef doesn't have a judge who says who can be part of the coral reef. It's also a neutral environment. Everyone is welcome. We treat a CEO the same as a first-time entrepreneur or a student. And that creates what we call a level playing ground, where there's no status and also no politics. It's something struck me as a foreigner coming to South Africa, that everything is so politicized. The platforms are usually political platforms. And we need platforms that are more entrepreneurial, more professional, and have an agenda that drives to solutions and not to political ambitions. We want to cross boundaries. So our spaces don't have a closed or focus only one profession, not only health or not only fintech. I think a creative designer and a fintech person could have something really nice together. Because innovation happens where things that were not connected are now connected. We create beauty. I strongly believe in the power of beauty, not to be fashionable, not to be status oriented or to be expensive, but to be aspirational and to create joy. Entrepreneurship is hard enough. Why do it in a space that is not beautiful? Let's have a beautiful space. But even deeper, if someone creates something special in whichever field you are, whether it's engineering, finance, someone who creates a magnificent spreadsheet model and someone looks at it on the same profession, that's a beautiful model. So when something is of real quality, we often use words of beauty. So beauty is not only about art. Art is important, like the one you see behind me, but it's really that it's about excellence. The other thing we want to do is take away hassles. So if you are doing business, trying to innovate, you don't want to bother about internet connectivity, HVAC not working. And one of the biggest compliments one of our members said a few years ago, said, Paul, I'm happy that you do what you do because I can focus on what I need to do and I get shit done. And I think that's really what it is about. Make sure that our members, that an entrepreneur can concentrate on what they set out to do and not have to worry about tables, desks, and all the other stuff. Then quickly touch on the concept of trust. I know many people speak about IP, and IP is about protecting your idea. But in the vision that I just shared is actually ideas need sharing to come to fruition and to come to an application. And that needs trust. So we set out in an environment of a country like South Africa, which is not a high trust country. How can create environments of trust that you can share things without feeling that someone steals your idea? And actually get the experience when I share, I actually get more, not less. Connecting people is really obvious. In a way, we are a hospitality business. Our people are not only about cleaning the desks and the tables and setting up the internet, but about engaging. What are you about? What is important for you? And maybe I can connect you to someone who can help you get there. Celebrate is really critical. One of our members said, please celebrate, because sometimes I struggle and I'm in a dip as an entrepreneur and I think, geez, I was doing so great and now I hit a blockage. It's so great to see the celebration of others, because that gives me the motivation to continue when it's tough, because it's not always an easy road. Innovation is not a straight path. So celebration of when you have a milestone, celebration of each other is really important. And the last part, and that's what I want to end with, before I take any questions if you have, is a partner. We don't want to pretend to be able to do everything. So from the beginning of WS17, we partner with quite a lot of partners. And we said, we create the environment, we create the playing field, but we need to be neutral. So we have built quite a partner network from different backgrounds that fulfill different roles in the area of innovation and entrepreneurship. We provide space for them, we create exchanges. The one thing there you see, the HC is Heavy Chef, which is a great platform for learning for entrepreneurs. Check it out. Africa Tikkun, for instance, I want to highlight that one, is a social development company, usually in townships, but also picking up more a role in entrepreneurship. So we're creating 2 hubs like a WS17, one in Soweto, one in Deep Sloot Township, because we believe we need to cross those borders, not only be in a CBD or an affluent area. We want to also reach the entrepreneurs in a township and across the divides, and really take away the divides and enable an entrepreneur from a township like Deep Sloot to just rent a meeting room in Sandton or in Rosebank and meet their clients there and just extend their reach. AWS members of ours can get up to $5,000 credits for AWS to set up their platform using AWS suites. That is working with grassroots entrepreneurs. Maybe you know some of these, I won't highlight everyone. And we're on the journey with Brightest Young Minds to develop our partnership further, which is very exciting for me. And that is where I want to end my monologue. I see there's quite a lot of things in the chat. I'm going to stop screen sharing and see if there's anything to address from your side.
Well, thank you, Paul. I think that was great and insightful. A nice history of the genesis of Workshop 17, and beautiful to see the different aspects that were considered and the analogy to vibrant coral reef. Really interesting to see that. We're going to take any questions. So as with all virtual summits, questions can be typed on the chat, and we can then read those out. We are getting a couple of questions coming in. So let's take a question from Kenneth. Can I ask that when you type your question in, please just let us know where you're typing from. So let us know the country you're typing from or the city you're typing from. And we can then at least put a geographic location to where the question is coming from. So from Kenneth Diole, he says, thank you, Paul. How did COVID impact your business given the work from home model? I think that's a very relevant question. So
yeah,
would you like to take one question at a time? I think
let me take this quickly, and then maybe you can look in the meantime if there's other questions you want to highlight, because this obviously COVID is a two-edged sword for us. When COVID hit in 2020 March, we had President Ramaphosa come out and actually put us in a strict lockdown, and we had to close our doors. So if you're in a space business and close your doors, it's not good. So it hit us quite hard, but it also stimulated us and necessitated us to innovate. So we created a platform online, and we asked ourselves the question, what can we provide? How can we service our members when they're at home? That was the first journey. So in the short term, not good for business. In the longer term, I think it put us right in the mainstream of the solutions where the solutions are now. The trends that we saw already for 10 years and were slowly going have now accelerated. The work from home experiment really learned us that we can work in a disparate environment and that the workspace doesn't need to be the corporate office. That flexibility becomes important. It's something we offer. Working from home can be very nice because you don't travel. So you want to work, I think we are transitioning from work from home to work near home. And WS17 as a strategy is now expanding not only in CBDs, but to areas where people live. So we can provide a professional workspace and a community close, not 1.5 hours travel every day, but closer to your home. We see corporates downscaling and saying, well, we have people working from home, but maybe them tapping into a WS17 as a professional workspace close to home, but also as a wider community to be stimulated and to have conversations that move beyond who is cooking tonight and who's doing the homeschooling today with the kids, and can I use the office and you'd use the kitchen table. So the need for workspace is still there and is actually growing, but not for the traditional workspace and more for workspace like a WS17. So we see the future very bright because of COVID. So we've navigated through COVID, but I think we're now really poised to grow. And I think what we offer is more in, not more niche anymore, but really more mainstream.
Thanks, Paul. So we got 2 questions that have just come in, or 3 now. Let's just look at our time. We are 2 minutes out. Let's pick one of the questions here, and I'll leave it to you, Paul. There's 3 questions.
Yeah.
One from Eswatini, another one from Centurion, South Africa, and another one from KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah. So I think it might go, and we're exploring also different countries. One is load shedding, and just connectivity has become so important. And to provide that area where you can have, even when load shedding, you still have electricity. Even when your internet provider fails, you have a backup. So we've invested quite heavily in backup power, backup water, backup internet, so that you can work uninterruptedly. I like the question also about politics. If there's always some politics, is never without, everyone has an agenda. But what we try to create is transparency. And I think the more transparency, the more safety, the more trust, and the less politics. And it's a continuous work. And I think the only thing we can do is to lead by example, to be open, to connect to people, to be respectful. And also to be respectful when something is a corporate knowledge that you can't share. So understanding when something you can't share, but also understanding how you connect and creating that facilitator role of a connector that is important in innovation.